Before we start, viewer discretion is advised, as this video game talks about suicide and the topic will also be talked about in this review. Wait, Life is Beautiful is a small indie game with a very simple but moody pixel art style with purposefully drab colors. This game came to my attention purely from the name, the idea of a game that focuses on suicide and what kind of story it would tell within that issue and how it would deal with it. And well, unfortunately, as good as the intentions of this game might be, I have very mixed feelings. The game starts with an opening where we are shown the main character's daily life and how repetitious it is. And I believe here the game is trying to invoke a feeling of boredom and sadness with again the drab colors, but I think it fails a bit at it by not giving enough insight into the main character's perspective of what's happening. And to the bigger issue, especially for me going into the game blind, was the game focusing too much on other characters. Every day after work you go and meet with your friends, and in this repetitive routine they are the source of new dialogue. So even if the dialogue sometimes relates to the themes of the game, it overall ends up distracting from the things that go unsaid. The whole writing of this game ends up being a bit of a problem because of it being a bit overtly comical and that contrasting too much with the more serious issues tackled by this game. One of the biggest examples is in this opening of the game where our main character talks to his dad about disliking his job, but then we play his job and it's somewhat fun in a funny way, which is a shame because it is in these more serious scenes that the writing of the game shines. There is a clear understanding of some of the underlying issues with our character. For example, in the same scene I just mentioned, where our main character complains about his job, there's a clear attempt from his part to express that he doesn't feel okay to his dad, and his dad just brushes it off and urges him to keep normality. Now, moving on to the actual core of the gameplay, this happening after you quit your job, willingly or not, which is another problem this game's story has. The illusion of choice is nothing new to games, but it's usually judged on how well it keeps up its illusion rather than how free it actually is. And in this game's case, it really can't keep up with the illusion as the story keeps moving forward regardless of your actions. Which, to be honest, in the grand scheme of things, really didn't bother me too much, as I do think that this game is at its best when it's focusing on the story of the main character. Regardless, the core of the gameplay doesn't do that. The game here focusing on saving people right before they commit suicide at this famous suicide bridge, which personally I think it's a bit insensitive to say the least. Something just doesn't sit right with me with the idea of a stranger convincing another stranger not to die by using the same old cliches you hear all the time. And to be fair, the characters in this game will call you out if you try to do that, but at the end of the day you're just substituting a line of dialogue with another. What makes it weird is the outcome and not so much what it's said. I think this is made worse in terms of insensitivity by how gamified it is, as saving people usually means money which is needed after you having quit your job. You also have a counter for every person you save and quote unquote let die. Our character goes into this suicide bridge every night where he will meet various different characters, most of who you will have to at least try to save, but also other characters that will come to talk to our main character, giving us some well-needed insight into him and the progress of the story. In fact, if it wasn't for one of those, we wouldn't even really know why the character had chosen to come and help the people that come to this bridge. My biggest gripe here is that there is some good writing here and an interesting story somewhere, but it's poorly organized and also so weirdly gamified that it stops it from ever feeling meaningful or resonating in any way. Regardless, after a night of trying to help people, you will go to your tent, as you are now homeless, where you will receive money and messages from the people and families of said people you helped or didn't help. So you can imagine that some will be very grateful and others less so, but at least it's not such a black and white thing, as helping someone doesn't always mean that they or their family will be happy, and the opposite also being true. But in general, you'll make money from saving people, and that doesn't feel right at all. It seems the developers here were very inspired and were trying to do the Papers, Please thing, but the thing is, Papers, Please gamifying served to emphasize the oppressiveness of the things it was criticizing. Here, it feels like the gameplay exists for the sake of gameplay. And it's sad because I think the game does in some ways understand and does do gameplay well, like in the dream-like intermissions where you'll do things like have to empty out a vending machine full of people or catch people as they run to throw themselves off a bridge. These many games emphasize the main character's mental state and how these obligations he brought upon himself weigh on him. Now, to finish this off, I will not spoil the ending, but they are for the most part very sad and hopeless, at least from my interpretation of them, at least for the endings I got. I'm not sure how many endings there is in this game, as information out there seems scarce, but be aware of that. If you choose to play this game, it is a very unique game, but it's also a very messy one. And I can't in a good conscience recommend it, even if my rating will not be negative, as I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. The presentation and the soundtrack are alright and moody, and the writing has legit heartfelt moments, even if a lot of it is overly comical and sometimes odd in a bad way. Recommendations wise, I would say probably stay away if you're feeling suicidal, because this game will not make you feel better, I don't think. But I guess I'm not an expert on the matter either. Now, speaking of availability of this game, there is a free so-called prologue of this game, but it's really just a demo of the core part of this game, which isn't a bad thing. It's always nice to have a demo, even if their name for it is a bit weird, given it's quite literally not a prologue. The actual game though goes for $4 on Steam, which is pretty reasonable for a game that will last you 2 to 3 hours in a first playthrough, but again, not particularly a game I recommend in general. I guess it's up to you if this particular subject matter is something you want to see, play, as I did give it a 5, but might be something you end up enjoying. But also gameplay wise, I would recommend Papers, Please instead. And story wise, well, there aren't many games tackling this issue, and I surely have not played all of them, but one that came to mind was Actual Sunlight, a game that has a much bigger focus on its main character, much like this game, but without the Fox choices and odd gamifications, being a much more text and story heavy game. Regardless though, I hope this video is informative and it helped you in some way. If you found this video and you're in a bad mental state or suicidal state, I would recommend looking for professional help. While art can be a great way of expression and understanding, I will always recommend seeking professional help if you are feeling not well, so you can understand what you might be going through, especially since introspection isn't always the answer. And I'm surely not an expert on the issue, but if you ever need to talk, my social medias are always open, and I try to answer everyone. Also, if I can pat myself on the back a bit, it seems this is the first, and by extension the only review of this game. I did found one review of the demo, and it wasn't really a review, it was a let's play, so you know, it shouldn't really matter to you, but it makes me a little bit happy. Anyways, I don't know if I should ask for likes and subscribes after the thing I just said, but regardless, I hope you're having having a good day, and if not, I hope you have one tomorrow. Goodbye.